everybody a moment or two to log in here. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for, I see it says Brain Health Series number 8. So I wasn't sure where we were in the count, but this is our 8th engagement with Jennifer Brush, our cognitive consultant. And Jennifer is the director of Brush Development and also a Fulbright specialist, the program director, Montessori Education for Dementia at St. Nicholas College in Ireland. And we're happy to have Jennifer with us again today. Today, she'll be talking about creating a supportive home environment and how to best support those with dementia. Jennifer, welcome. If you could maybe share a little bit more about your background before you get started, and we're happy to have you with us today.
Sure. Thank you, Marla. It's good to be here. Welcome, everybody. I'm a speech language pathologist by training, and I've worked with people with dementia specifically now for about 30 years. My primary focus for a number of years was research into the therapeutic use of the physical environment. So how we can use the physical environment to help support people who are aging, and specifically, how can we create an environment that supports people who have dementia. So I do a lot of work with long-term care communities, helping them to design supportive environments and helping them to improve their dementia programming. And I work with Kendal at home, helping to support members who have any kind of cognitive impairment. So typically that involves conducting a cognitive evaluation and then making recommendations for next steps, giving you information to communicate with your physician, collaborating with the life enrichment specialist and the care coordinators and the clinical director to help you maintain your skills for as long as possible and live a really healthy and purposeful life. I also teach Montessori Education for Dementia at St. Nicholas College in Dunleary, Ireland, which I enjoy very much. One of the things that I really like to do is work with the Montessori philosophy, helping to engage people who have dementia to help them be more active in their life. So today we're going to be talking about creating a supportive home environment. And we'll be talking about some things that are specific to dementia and other things that might just be specific to aging, not necessarily having to do with cognitive impairment. If you think about a home environment, the very best environment is one that supports the abilities of everybody who's living there. And usually when you talk about supportive home features, there's things that automatically come to mind. So you might think of having grab bars in your bathroom, right? Or a wheelchair accessible ramp going into the house. Maybe wider doorways. So if there is someone with a wheelchair or a walker, they can get through easily. The environment can have simple things like signs, okay? A sign to remind someone where the bathroom is, or a calendar to remind you about what day it is. Those are supportive environmental features already. They're not part of what we call the built environment, but they're definitely part of the environment. You might use a medication management system. Simple things that we all use: containers, labeled containers, hooks by the door, a consistent place to put your keys or your wallet or your purse to help you find them easily. Others would be alert systems, and we'll talk about some examples of those. When we're talking about making the home supportive, the very best way to do that is if it was designed that way from the beginning. So universal design is what we call the design of products and environments that can be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. So that if your house is designed with universal design principles, anybody of any ability could use anything in the house and live in the house. And I think that's a great feature. It's a great thing to have in a home or in a building, but it's not something that most of us have the luxury of having, really. So most of us have a home that needs to be adapted in some way. And so we'll talk about some of the reasons that you might need to adapt things and what some simple adaptations may be. Just a little more about universal design. It's equitable. So that means that it's useful to people with diverse abilities. It accommodates a wide range of preferences. And universal design means that it's intuitive, it's really easy to use. You don't need directions or an explanation on how to use it. Um, it's it communicates information to you no matter what your level of intellect may be or your sensory abilities. So I can give you an example of something that I don't think is universal design that drives me crazy are those water um, faucets that we see in so many public bathrooms that you have to put your hand under and it has to be just the right place and you go move your hands back and forth and you wait and right and that doesn't seem intuitive at all. We naturally go to use a handle and find there isn't a handle and then we kind of start moving our hands around to see if we can make something happen, right? So that's not something that's accessible to anybody. The sink, for example, is wheelchair height. There's no vanity underneath it, so you could easily get underneath it in a wheelchair. It has handles, place to grab. And it has a faucet that's easy to use that doesn't have twist knobs. So this would be a bathroom that has features that anybody could use. So that's just, a simple example there. Universal design also minimizes hazards and it can be used with things in the environment can be used with a low amount of effort. So for example, this pull out, I love this. I'd like one of these in my kitchen, this pull out cabinet or shelving with the pegs. This is easy to reach. It doesn't require a lot of effort to move. It's accessible to anybody. Things are also visually accessible. So you can see what you need easily. Here's another example. This could be used for someone who isn't in a wheelchair, just as can be used for someone who is in a wheelchair. So that's just a little bit of background about universal design. When we're talking about making changes in the home because of aging, I want to talk a little bit about why we do that. Mainly it's because of sensory changes. There's certainly physical changes that take place too. Those I find are so obvious that it's the sensory changes sometimes that people don't realize that they're even occurring because they happen so gradually. Over time, different sensory functions change. There's a decrease in the receptor cells and our nerve fibers, and signals in general need to be stronger for older adults. And I'm talking about just healthy older adults right now. So we find that colors need to be stronger, smells need to be stronger, tastes, light, and sound. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is and some specifics. Let's talk about the aging eye first. There's a decrease in the size of the pupil as we age, and that happens pretty young. It reduces the amount of light that comes into the eye. So a healthy 60-year-old only receives about a third of the retinal luminance of a 20-year-old. So healthy older adults easily need 2 to 3 times more light than a younger person. I certainly notice this easily in, right away in restaurants that are dimly lit. It's very hard to read the menu. It's more difficult for me to drive at night. Our pupil just doesn't react as quickly. So when you're going from a space that's bright light to a darker light or vice versa, your pupil needs more time to react. There's also a loss of elasticity in the lens. It makes it difficult to focus on something close up and then shift our focus quickly and look at something that's far away. We need reading glasses as we age and have difficulty seeing close up, at least a number of us do. There's also a thickening and yellowing of the lens. And when I'm working on design projects, picking colors and fabrics and things like that, I often look at them with a slight piece of acetate that's a bit yellowed to mimic how that might look for an older adult. There's also a reduced contrast and color saturation. So what that means is that there is a need for more contrast in order to be able to distinguish items from one another, and more color saturation is needed to be able to identify colors from one another. And then there's just general low vision challenges that happen as we age. So those things happen naturally as we age. And if you have dementia, there's even additional visual problems that occur. So reduced visual acuity, more of a challenge seeing different colors, especially identifying different type colors or shades of blue in the blue, blue violet, blue green range, more trouble distinguishing items from one another, very little tolerance for glare. Older adult eyes are extremely sensitive to glare. So that means that we need to pay attention to glare, both indirect and direct glare. So direct glare would be if I'm sitting right under an exposed bulb, or if I'm sitting right by a window and there's direct sunlight coming in and shining in my eyes. Okay. Or even glare. I find it very difficult at night driving when there's glare from the headlights from oncoming cars. That's all direct glare. And we can do things like putting sheers or blinds on windows, changing light fixtures, changing the types of bulbs that we use to reduce direct glare. Indirect glare is light that is bouncing off another surface. So if I have a light over a table and a shiny surface on the table, and that table is reflecting then the light back to me, there's going to be glare. So whatever is on the surface of the table is going to be difficult for me to see. So another example would be artwork. The lights reflecting on the glass of artwork causes glare and then makes it more difficult to see. So often in memory care communities, I'll recommend that organizations either don't put glass over artwork or buy non-glare glass to reduce the glare. We see increasing confusion with people with dementia when they see glare and shapes and shadows in windows, especially as it becomes darker outside and it's light inside. That can cause some visual distortions, or people think that they're hallucinating. So this visual problems are certainly exacerbated in dementia. We also see an impaired depth perception. So it's difficult for people to judge just how far away things are from them. There's a general difficulty kind of understanding where they are in space. You might see someone pick up a drink and take a sip and put it back in their food on their plate instead of next to their plate. And that's really because of an impaired depth perception, not necessarily because of confusion. So we have significant visual challenges and also significant hearing challenges that are common in older adults. So 1 in 3 adults over 65 has some kind of hearing loss. And these are the most common types of hearing loss that we see. Presbycusis is a gradual loss that it occurs in both ears at the same time. There's a conductive hearing loss where the passage of sound is blocked either in the ear canal or in the middle ear. It could be blocked due to damage of anatomical structures, some kind of physical blockage, either in the outer ear, the ear canal, or the middle ear. And then sensory neural hearing loss is when there's a problem with the nerve pathway from the inner ear to the brain. Soft sounds are difficult to hear. High frequency sounds are difficult. Even louder sounds may be unclear or muffled. Speech is going to sound distorted, and this is the most common type of permanent hearing loss that we see in older adults. Oh, and one thing to note about hearing loss is it's a huge risk factor for cognitive impairment. So it's very important that if you have hearing loss, that you go to an ENT, that you have received treatment for your hearing loss, whether that's medication or surgery or hearing aids, use assistive listening devices. It's really critical to treat hearing impairment. So we have some sensory changes that are going to mean that we need to make some modifications in the home for independence and for safety. And certainly, I know that all of you that are on the call today, your primary objective is to age in place and to be in your home as long as possible. And the care coordinators at Kendal at home are focused on that as well. And so part of the services that Kendal at Home provides is to do a thorough home assessment. The care coordinators have worked with me to create a home assessment, and they will have you show them around both the outside and the inside of the house. And they're looking for a number of things. I'm not going to go through the whole home assessment, but I just wanted to give you some examples of some of the things that they're looking for that they may bring up to you or suggest that you change. And this is really for the purpose of keeping you independent and aging in place. And it's not just about falling. It's really about being able to function at your very best. So typically we'll look first at how you come and go. How do you go in the house? How do you leave the house? Is it typically through your garage, through the front door, through the back door? And we'll look at that path of entry. Are there lights there? Okay, so if you're coming in the dark, are you able to see, or is there an opportunity for you to fall or for your safety to be compromised? Okay, is there adequate lighting right at the door? Are you able to see when you're putting your key in the door? Looking at the surfaces. Are there large cracks that might be a trip hazard or uneven surfaces? Especially if someone living in the house has cognitive impairment that's going to be impacting their depth perception, we really want to take a look at those paths. Any decks or wooden surfaces, handrails, stairs, are they free of cracks? Are they free of exposed nails? Is there a banister? And is it sturdy so that if you do lose your balance, you have something to hang on to? Okay. We want that banister rail to extend slightly beyond the top and bottom of the steps. Okay. And then look even looking at things like gutter downspouts, making sure that they're extended away from walkways, away from the driveway. So you're not going to slip in water or in ice. Um, and so if they bring up that some of these things may need to be tidied, it's really no reflection on you as a homeowner. It's a goal of making you as safe as possible. Um, they'll look at a number of things in the home, but one thing we always look at is, can you walk or navigate through the home independently? And so there's a couple of conditions that are affected by that. Lighting. Is there enough lighting? And is it equally distributed? So meaning, is the house evenly lit? So I just mentioned a minute ago that with visual difficulties, with the pupil's reaction time slowing down, if you're moving in areas of your home that have different lighting levels, that requires different adjustment of your pupil. Okay? And and that's going to take some time, and that means there's a chance for you not to see something. So we want to make sure that everything is evenly lit. There's not areas that are significantly darker than others. Making sure bulbs are the appropriate wattage for lamps, that there's light switches that are located easily so dark spaces can be illuminated right away before you go into the room. Everybody should have night lights in the bathroom and in the hallway, your bedroom. If you're getting up at night to go to the bathroom, you don't want to have to turn on a switch, and you don't want to just feel your way in the dark. So it could be a light that's left on all the time, or it's very easy now and inexpensive to buy night lights that are motion sensing. You should always have a flashlight by your bed and on all levels of the home. It's kept in the same place. So if you do have a power outage, it's really easy to find a flashlight. And then this is a very safety related thing, making sure outlets are not overloaded. So it's never a good idea to plug one of those multi-plug boxes into a single outlet. There's other things like surge protectors that are safer, and still you don't want to overload those or stretch a number of extension cords around a room, because that's a trip hazard as well. So we're looking at functioning on a variety of levels. We're looking at functioning in the bathroom, in the bedroom, and also in the kitchen. So especially if someone has a physical impairment, how are they moving items that may be bulky or heavy around in the kitchen? Okay. We might need a rolled cart or a little rolled table, for example, to help with that instead of carrying something that's too heavy. Is the person able to use the stove independently? Or is there some cognitive impairment that might be making this a safety risk? We look at to see if the kitchens are arranged so that food preparation may be able to be done by in a chair, for example, if standing for a long time might be a problem. And then making sure that anything that's poisonous or flammable is away from the stove and away from food products and stored in a different place. So you don't want to put cleaner and food in the same cabinet if you're living with someone who has visual impairment or who has cognitive impairment. It's just not going to be a good idea. There's too much of a chance for an accident taking place. So let's talk about some simple things that you can do in your home that don't require a lot of money or remodeling, that can help, especially to support someone who might be having some degree of memory impairment or dementia. Labeling the items is very helpful. And now there's all sorts of fun containers that you can purchase for labeling. And it's, again, something that everybody in the family can use. So having a hook, a basket, where your keys, your cell phone, all those frequently used items go, right when you come in the door, is very helpful. Um, One thing I often do with individuals who do have cognitive impairment is to remove a um, cabinet door or two in the kitchen, on the cabinet where they keep most of their plates and cups. Simplify and organize what's in there, and then label it, put small labels so that it's not kind of out of sight for the person who has memory impairment, that the items that they need are readily available. And I have to be honest, sometimes I get pushback from family members that, or spouses, that they don't want to do this, that it doesn't look as nice as having the doors on the cabinets. And at this point, it's not about whether it looks nice. It's really about how to allow the person who has some memory loss to maintain their dignity and their independence. You want them to be able to access things easily without struggling, without having to look for them. Okay? And if taking off one or two doors of the cabinets and putting on labels helps, then that's something that's really worthwhile to do. Another thing that we'll do is provide directions. Common directions would be things like using the washing machine. We might circle or label or color code things also on the washing machine to make them easier for people to use. Either buying a simplified remote or providing direct direction. These are all things that can help a person, again, to maintain their dignity and maintain their independence for as long as possible. I've written out directions and made cue cards for people for brushing their teeth, washing their face, even using the toilet or taking a shower. And and sometimes that's all it takes, is just that visual reminder with some pictures and step-by-step directions for someone then to be able to complete the task independently. And that's what we want. None of us want to ask anybody for help, right? So this is all about figuring out ways that we can do things on our own. So I mentioned the need for additional contrast earlier. So contrast is what helps us to distinguish between different items. And healthy older people need 3 times as much contrast as a younger person. People with dementia need even more contrast. So by using contrast, we can help people see better. If you have a dark table, and if we're starting from scratch, and I have a light floor, I'd make sure I have a dark table. And then on that dark table, I want to put a light plate, right? So especially the table and the plate contrast from one another. If I have a light table and a light plate, it's going to be hard to see the plate. I've done a few research studies that have shown that contrast at the table setting and increasing lighting at the table setting actually results in statistically significant increases in the amount of food that people consume at meals. So contrast and lighting really do make a difference. If you have a light table and light plates, doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy a whole new set of dishes. How about finding a nice bright placemat to put in between to really make that plate pop and stand out and call attention to the meal? That's going to help somebody focus better. We also will use contrasting colored edges on surfaces. So this is particularly helpful in the bathroom. I would say that the bathroom is the area that we really need to increase contrast the most. With a lot of the designs, contemporary designs for bathrooms, you'll see all white bathrooms or all beige bathrooms. I see this in long-term care communities all the time. They'll have a beige or cream tiled floor, and then a white toilet and beige walls and a white tub and shower. And for someone with dementia, we might see it fine. They are not going to see that toilet standing out from the wall or that shower edge or tub edge. It just all blends together. And I know that might be hard for us to imagine, but it's very, very difficult for someone who has cognitive impairment. So look around the house. Simple things that you can do. Light is change your light switches or your switch plate covers. Go to Lowe's or Home Depot. There's all sorts of colored switch plates. There's all sorts of places online that sell different colored switch plates. And so you want it to stand out. So if you have a cream or white switch and a cream or white wall or light colored wall, you don't want a cream or white switch plate cover. You want something that's going to really pop and call your attention to it, so then you can find the switch. It's easier. Okay. We talked about plates and placemats. Another place would be utensils or tools, the toothbrush. So if you have a white counter, you don't want to give someone a white toothbrush. You want to get a colored toothbrush. So if it's sitting on the counter in the bathroom, it's really easy to see. Okay. Brightly colored utensils or utensils with brightly colored handles are going to be easier for somebody to see. Looking at the handles that you use on cabinets in the kitchen or a dresser or cabinets in the bathroom. If you have white cabinets, you don't want white or silver knobs or handles because they're just not going to stand out. If you use a fun color or if you use black up against the white, that's something that people are going to be able to see. I always suggest that people paint the wall behind the toilet a contrasting color. And if for some reason that's really not possible, you could use a colored toilet seat. But the simple act of changing the wall color makes the tub stand out, makes the toilet stand out. It makes grab bars and toilet paper more easy to see. And then certainly you want a brightly colored shower curtain, again, that's easy to see. So the ideal situation would be a darker floor, a white toilet, and a colored wall. So there's contrast between all the items in the bathroom. And then often individuals with memory impairment may get to a point where they are unable to locate the toilet or the bathroom, and they may need a sign on the door for the bathroom to remind them of where it is. Another thing that you can do is improve lighting to help with independence. So I mentioned that it should be even and consistent. You don't want bright glaring bulbs. You want to make sure that bulbs are certainly bright, but you don't want exposed bulbs. They use less energy. They have a much longer lifespan. You don't have the glare. They're readily available now, and you can get them in a soft white. Look at places where falls may happen, the stairway, in the bathroom, in closets even, and look for opportunities to increase that lighting. Highlight the switches either by changing the switch color or the switch plate. There's also switches that are light about installing lights that turn on automatically when the bathroom door is opened or when there's motion in the bathroom. That way, if someone does go in the bathroom in the middle of the night, the light comes on and it's a full light and not just a night light. You could look into pressure sensitive switches for door frames of closets or battery powered closet lights that have motion detectors. That would be a lower cost alternative so that people can remain independent in dressing by making choices and being able to see what's in their closet. And then minimizing glare goes right along with making the lighting more effective, looking for places where there may be glare at different times of the day and using shears or blinds to cut back on that glare. If somebody is reading, sewing, knitting, putting a model together, working on a puzzle, then it may be helpful to have some adjustable task lighting. I find that it's helpful to put the lights on the wall that could be even swing arm lamps next to beds, either on a bedside table or on the wall. Mounting lighting on the underside of cabinets. There's lots of options for LED lighting that you can install very easily under on the underside of cabinets to make it easier to see things when you're preparing food on the counter. And you want to place task lighting on the left side and slightly in front of a right-handed person, on the right-hand side for a left-handed person. And the task should be next to the task. The light should be next to the task, not in front of it. And so having either a couple small desk lamps in strategic locations or having one that you can move around is really helpful. Sometimes the home is so cluttered that it becomes overstimulating. And not just for somebody who has memory impairment, but especially for someone who has dementia or memory impairment. There can be difficulties finding something. The clutter can cause difficulty focusing on an activity or even remembering the task that they need to do. And it's not uncommon as people develop dementia and they become more progressively impaired for them to kind of misjudge what is important and what they need to hold on to. Their judgment and insight is bad, and holding on to things brings them comfort and a sense of security. And so they tend to pile up things that really aren't needed. So it's a really good idea to try and simplify the home and try and declutter. And I know that that can be tricky sometimes. Sometimes people may not be cooperative. You can approach the person in a very kind and gentle manner, ask if you can help tidy up, and make sure to get their input. Tidying up doesn't mean just throwing somebody's things away without asking. Okay? The ideal situation would be working with them and providing some choices about what they're keeping, what they might be throwing away. One way that I've had a lot of success simplifying and decluttering is finding some charities or places where we can donate items and talking to the person about looking for items in the home that could be of use to other people that they might not be using very much, so that they feel good about giving the items away to somebody who needs them. If you can't do this cleanup collaboratively, then you could ask a friend or a family member to invite the person who has cognitive impairment on an outing or over to their house for a little while, over a number of sessions. So you could go in and little by little, at least clean up and organize some things. You don't want to try and tackle the whole house at once or even a whole room. It's going to be, if somebody has been collecting a lot of things over time that are causing a problem in the home, then you're going to have to do this gently and slowly. I've found that it's helpful to keep people on task if you have 4 different containers. One for things that you want to keep. These are things that the person would use every day. They need or use them every day. And then later they'll be organized and put into places that the person can find. a box for donating things to a local charity, things that are clearly trash, old receipts, anything that's broken, anything that's expired, and it should be thrown away and in the box and then be removed from the home if you think that the person may go into the garbage and bring those things back into the house. And then a box for storage. So we all have things that are sentimental items that we don't use every day, but they might be creating too much clutter in the house, and the person wants to hang on to these things. So they can be labeled and stored as long as there's place to store them, or you box and the person could reminisce with you and talk about the different items and make some decisions about who they might want to give those items to. And they don't even have to give them to them at that moment, but the act of sorting through and organizing and making some decisions. But again, we need to um, involve the person as much as we're reasonably able to. We don't want to overwhelm them, and we certainly don't want to just throw out items that might be meaningful to the person. And then things that they're saving needs to be visually organized. So all of those keep items go back in the environment and they're labeled. They're in containers that are labeled, they're in organizers that are on the counter or on their desk. Everything easy to find. The common things that they use every day really need to be visually accessible. Another simple thing that you can implement in the home is alerting devices. So I mentioned hearing impairment. There's actually a number of devices that are really helpful for helping people who are hearing impaired. That even sometimes with your hearing aids, you may not hear as well as you'd like. So typically these alerting So a flashing light, you could have an alarm clock that has a bright flashing light, or a doorbell that has a flashing light, okay? A medication reminder or timer that has a flashing light to remind you to do something, okay, lets you know somebody's at the door. I really like the vibrotactile sensors. So this is an example of an alarm clock. It's first of all, this alarm clock has everything. It's auditory. It has a very loud alert system. It's visual. It has a flashing light, but it also has a vibrotactile component. So that goes under the pillow in the bed, and it shakes. I have seriously been thinking about getting this for my teenager so she can get up for school and get up for work on time. So these are great. I have a family member that has one of these that has been hearing impaired, since she was in her late 30s, early 40s, and this is really helpful. So there's a lot of devices that have a vibrotactile component. There's safety devices, so fire alarms, carbon monoxide detectors that you can get a vibrotactile component. So if you're sleeping and you wouldn't hear the alarm, it will shake the bed and alert you. You can also have alarm systems that let you know when someone's opened certain doors in the house. And then there's, really simple little things that we can do. Maybe you just want to be aware if your loved one who has cognitive impairment is leaving the back door to go out into the backyard, and you just want to make sure that you know that they're out there. A simple little bell on the door does the trick and doesn't cost a lot of money. There's really a lot of now very high tech devices for home monitoring, but sometimes just the really simple things work well. And then I just want to end with It's important to stay engaged at any age in our life. But it's really important if you are at risk for cognitive impairment or you have cognitive impairment to still have meaningful, purposeful activity. The more we continue doing things, engaging ourselves, challenging ourselves, learning new things, the better it's going to be for our brain health. We've talked about that at other sessions. We've talked about setting up memory centers in our home during other brain health series. So if you missed that, you can go back and take a look at that. That was in March, I believe. We talked about memory centers. But staying engaged, even if someone has more advanced dementia, they still have a lot of skills and a lot of opportunities to contribute on a daily basis. And we want to make sure that they can do that. Simple things like wiping and setting the table before every meal, or participating by washing fruits and vegetables if they're unable to fully prepare a meal, clearing the table, dusting, general tidying of the house, folding the laundry. Engaging with physical exercise is going to keep your brain healthy. So walking, swimming, taking an exercise class, whether that's in person or online, puzzles, games, cards, art and music, getting outside and doing things that you enjoy, like gardening, taking care of a pet, walking a dog, looking for opportunities to engage with the other generations. So you might want to build a model or assemble a kit with a child. You might want to read to a child, making a memory book or a photo album together. We talked about memory books also in March when we talked about setting up a memory center in your home. So if you missed that, you can go and listen to that webinar again. So look all the time, no matter what someone's ability is, there's a way that they can continue to engage at some level. And we want to make sure that we are always giving them that opportunity. One really exciting new specialist now. So Marianne's available to work with members who have cognitive impairment, who we want to make sure that they continue to be engaged in life and are in a home environment that's really supportive of them. So I encourage all of you to, if her services are recommended to you, to really take advantage of that. And then I want to point out a great resource right here in Ohio, which is the Ohio Council for Cognitive Health. There's a lot of information on their website about making the home supportive. I consult with the council and have created their educational material for them. So they have a great program called Hand in Hand that has a lot of good resources. And Kendal at Home has their handouts and material that are available to you. And we have a handout on making the home supportive. So I'll make sure to share that with Sue and Marla so they can share that with you. So I left a few minutes for questions today. If anybody has anything that they wanted to ask or share, please feel free to do so.
Thank you, Jennifer. If you have any questions for Jennifer, you can either click on Q&A or chat at the bottom of your screen and go ahead and type those questions in. So many great takeaways and so much information that is so important for everyone when we talk about safety, whether you have cognitive deficits or not as we age in our homes. Something to keep in mind that your care coordinators also conduct safety assessments of your home, and that as part of being a member of Kendal at Home, we do offer those home safety modification evaluations on an annual basis. So if you have not had yours this year, please reach out to your care coordinator and they'd be happy to get that set up for you.
Yeah, sometimes there's really simple things that we can do, like removing a throw. A trip hazard if you're using a walker or a cane, or you may have visual perceptual skills. So that, and sometimes we're just so used to the way that our homes are that we don't realize that there's things in them that could be restricting our independence. So I think the home evaluation is definitely worthwhile. It takes about an hour or so, and your care coordinator can then talk to you about the recommendations.
Absolutely. And I like that you framed it as well, that it's not just looking for fall hazards, but it's looking for ways to stay independent. You know, we often think about just those things that could create falls and not thinking forward on staying independent through our lifetime. So
Exactly. Yep. Sometimes we all need different kinds of supports. I wear glasses to support my visual impairment, and I, take notes and keep a calendar and use things on my phone for reminders of appointments. And we all can use a little bit of organization in our lives, in our hectic lives these days. Any questions?
it looks like Lynn Storr has raised her hand.
You can unmute yourself if you want, Lynn, and just ask away.
I don't think I can unmute her. I'm trying to. Oh,
there you go.
There. Okay. We should be able to hear you now, Lynn.
Okay. My question is, I'm having a desperate need to have help decluttering my home. And is there any knowledge of someone I could hire to help me?
And that looks to be a common theme because someone else just typed in the same question. So certainly the care coordinators do have some recommendations of decluttering agencies and individuals that members have used in the past.
That's
So
great.
I'd recommend to reach out to your care coordinator and they can do some research on that and provide you that information. And actually,
I will do that.
Perfect. And I believe this month, and Sue might be able to tell me the day off the top of her head, Cheryl, one of our care coordinators, will be talking about decluttering and having a decluttering expert as her guest on that care coordination corner this month as well.
That would be
Fantastic.
Perfect timing.
And Marla, that would be Wednesday, May the 19th at 11 a.m.
Thank you, Sue.
Wonderful. Good. That's a good follow-up to this.
Absolutely.
And at what time did you say? I'd missed that? What time?
11 a.m.
Gotcha. Sorry. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, as always, thank you, Jennifer, for the information. And this session, as well as the previous monthly sessions of Brain Health, are located on the website. So if you've missed previous sessions with Jennifer, feel free to view those at your leisure. They are pre-recorded and there for you to view whenever you'd like. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for offering it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.